delivers a mix of life lessons, uncompromising truth, and uplifting humor that effectively communicates to the listener that failure is not final. Everyone has a purpose to fulfill, and others need to. Dan began his speaking journey in front of youth as a young life leader in 1985. He shares his inspirational messages at camps, retreats, and weekly get-togethers to students and adults from all walks of life. Dan's presentation is titled, "The Mirror is Not Broken, Setting the Trajectory. Wise Life Choices Lead to Our Desired Future." Welcome, Dan.
Thank you, Irma. Appreciate that. Hello, everybody. I am so excited to be hanging out with everybody this last couple of days. I've been watching. I was at work, and instead of watching me come and go in my office and people come and go, I decided just to keep the video off. But a lot of great stuff, really super great information. A lot of little nuggets being written down that I hope to implement as I go into the next couple months here and get some stuff straightened out in my own life, I think, as we all work on ourselves. I'm in San Diego, beautiful sunny San Diego, and it's really hot here right now. So if you're in a winter place, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to rub it in or anything like that. However, if you see the solar panels start to sweat a little bit, I apologize. I may turn the video off and tap it down a little bit. And the window's open, so if you hear the dogs barking outside, I'll also apologize for that ahead of time, because it's almost feeding time for the fat one right now. So we'll let her bark if she has to. I'm going to imagine we probably all had in our lives some sort of event that maybe changed our thinking on how we would approach something, maybe the trajectory of our life, whether it was good or bad. I've had a number of those events happen in my life, and I want to share a couple of them real briefly here because it kind of sets up what I want to talk about a little bit later. Now, as I've been watching these presentations, it's been exciting to see kind of the back and forth, kind of like friends sitting around the coffee table and somebody more standing up, more presentation. I typically stand up. I am sitting down right now because I am a little more comfortable, and I set a green screen up for the first time, and I was quite literally afraid of knocking it over during the presentation. So I'm sitting down just to be safe. So hopefully you guys will give me a little bit of latitude with that, okay? Well, the first event that really impacted my life, and it happened in 1996. I was serving as a deep sea diver in the United States Navy. And for those of you who are old enough, you may recall in 1996, the crash of TW Flight 800 off the coast of Long Island. And if you don't recall that, you can Google it. But TW flight crashed about 12 minutes after takeoff, and all 230 souls were lost. And I was stationed at a mobile diving and salvage unit. So if it fell in the water or crashed, we were called up to go retrieve it. And so we loaded up our gear on a local salvage boat and steamed up to the coast of New York, and we moored our boat over the cockpit and the first class section. The other salvage boat moored themselves over the coach passenger section, which was about 1.5 miles away. I was on the night crew. We were 12 on, 12 off our workload, and I was getting ready to do my first dive. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning with my dive buddy, Jerry Ogle. And this is hard hat diving, so I just want to explain a little bit. It's not just scuba. We slap the tanks on and go diving. It's a hard hat with an umbilical, lots of weights, heavy boots. We're walking on the bottom. And so we loaded up onto the stage. The stage lifts up, swings out over the water, and lowers us to the bottom, which was 120 feet. And it was about 46 degrees temperature in the water that time of year. And so we head out of the stage, and we're basically going to turn over wreckage to find victims to recover them and get them back to their families. I hear Jerry over the comms. He's like, "Dan, I have one." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm coming that way." I had to go back to the stage, get a body bag, walk out to where Jerry was, and there was a gentleman in a first class chair. We cut him out of the chair and got him into the body bag, and we walked him back to the stage and put him into the what they call a salvage basket, which is where the recovered remains of the people would be. So we finished our dive and we got on the stage when topside said it's time to go back. And they said, ready yourselves to leave bottom. And they started the slow ascent up. Now for a dive that long, we on gas a lot of nitrogen and we can't go straight to the surface. And so we're at a 30-foot stop to decompress. And this is where kind of the event takes place. I looked up and I could see my umbilical going to the surface and kind of disappear through the surface water. The lights from the ship were kind of gleaming down on us. And the thought of not making it off that dive came across my mind. As I thought about those 230 victims, there's no guarantee that I was going to make it out of that dive, that I was going to make it to the surface. There was a number of things that could have gone wrong. Fortunately, I did. I got up and over and they got us undressed and got us in the chamber for decompression. And I spent the next 2 months up there with about 150 other divers recovering the wrecks. But I thought about that first dive all the time for about a year. And it really impacted my life in a number of fronts. One, kind of on a spiritual level, I was kind of like, what happened to those people? That guy was sitting in first class on his way to France, probably to see family, enjoy a vacation, who knows what. And 12 minutes after takeoff, his life was over. And it really made me think about the preciousness of life, but also the suddenness that things can go awry in our life. The jokers, as Dan Webster from Authentic Leadership says, enter our lives are these things that violently knock us off course unexpectedly. And they're truths that are in our lives that we may not want to be truths in our lives. And so I was thinking through that. It made me change how I thought about things relationally with my wife, for instance. What's the last thing I said to her? And would that be the last thing she heard? So my verbiage and the way I express myself began to change a little bit as well. Practically, I mean, how do I live my life? Do I run stoplights? Do I go 90 miles an hour down the street? Do I do really stupid things like, water skiing? I just things like that. I'm just like, what am I going to do practically in my own life? So these events really kind of shaped me and changed my trajectory on the way I began to act. So I want to fast forward about 2 years. I'm out of the Navy. I'm now working for a youth organization in the leadership role for this place. And a couple of things happened in my life that really throw me into a tailspin. One, my leadership ability was called into question. Now, I don't know how many of you have had your abilities called into a question by leaders over you, but it's a tough thing to go through. And that was really difficult for me. Ultimately, I ended up resigning from that role because I saw the writing on the wall and pretty much was going in the direction of being fired, most likely. My wife and I were trying to have kids and we found out we couldn't have kids. So here's another emotional ding in life. It wasn't her, it was me. The plumbing works, but it's got no potency. So we weren't going to have our own kids. And we went through a bunch of testing and things like that, just wasn't happening. And then finally, in 2003, late 2003, with all of this, I was diagnosed with cancer. And I was like, holy crap, man, when is life going to give me a break? Now, I know what you're thinking right now. Dan, you said you shared humor. There's nothing funny about any of this so far. And I agree, there's not. So hang with me because it gets better. But these things, I just want to kind of set up this where I was in 2005 in my life. It was really a tough time. So I'm going through my chemo, going through my radiation. I'm done with it. I've had some medical issues and I'm done. And it's time to get back to normal, right? All this stuff's in the rearview mirror. I come out of the shower one day and I find myself looking at myself in a full-length mirror on the closet door. And I was shocked. I was unbelievably shocked. I was like, what am I looking at right now? I was like, what happened to the wrestler, high school wrestler and college wrestler? What happened to the Navy diver who worked out every day? What happened to the guy who was in shape? I was just turned into this semi-pear-shaped ball of goo. I was so out of shape and just squishy. It wasn't even funny. I was just like, what happened to me? So as I stood there and looked at myself, grossly out of shape, and the pun is intended with that. It was gross. It was really gross. I decided two things. I resolved to, one, get back into shape. That had to happen. I resolved, secondly, to get rid of all the mirrors that showed me from the neck down in the house, because they just had to go. And my wife vetoed that one, that we had to keep the mirrors, which is probably a good thing, actually. But I did decide to get back into shape. And so as a level-headed, kind of clear-thinking guy, I did what every level-headed, clear-thinking guy would do. I signed up to run a sprint triathlon. Now, I don't know if you know what a sprint triathlon is. I would just tell you it's hell, but I would need to describe it a little bit more. It's a mini version of a standard triathlon. So it's a 1,000-meter swim, a 18-mile bike ride, and a 5K, 3.1 mile run. And versus the full triathlon or Ironman, what they call it in Hawaii. So I began to train for this thing. I signed up, went, put my name in, paid literally to do this. And they assigned me to the Clydesdale group, which was bad enough. I was already feeling terrible about myself. Now I'm part of the Clydesdales, which actually one guy pointed out isn't a bad thing, because Clydesdales are pretty impressive. But I wasn't. I was in it for the wrong reason. I was just over 200 pounds. That's why I qualified. I did not exactly train in a way that was going to lead to success. So the 1,000-mile bike ride, or excuse me, the 1,000-meter swim, I would swim about 200 meters in a pool, and I would times that by like 5 and say, okay, I think that'll probably do the trick. And then I would ride this little 6-mile loop in my neighborhood and times that by 3. And I would say, okay, I think that's going to be pretty close to the time I'll do the bike. I did the same thing for the run. I'd run a mile, times it by 3. That's it. I didn't do it every day. I did it maybe a couple times a week. 6 weeks later, it's race day. I'm standing there with my fellow Clydesdales. And it is a group that none of you would want to be in. All the other groups were very, we'll say, sexy. We had these like eggshell white with kind of brown on one side because they maybe had been sitting in the sun or a dog had been peeing on them. I don't know. But I mean, they were the ugliest swim caps I've ever seen. Everybody else had like neon yellows and cobalt blue and red. And they were in like these Speedos and they all were fit and muscular. And we weren't. Nobody in our group was wearing a Speedo. Thank God. One guy was wearing cutoff jeans and another guy was finishing off a Snickers bar before we started our swim. I was like, what? Why am I here? And I almost quit right there. But my wife was standing over there and she's like, you paid for this, get your butt in the water. And I'm like, okay, honey. So we started our swim. The Clydesdales were off. Now they start a new heat every 5 minutes. And I was passed 3 times by separate heats. So 3 separate heats passed me. I was so slow. It was ridiculous. I mean, it was so terrible how slow I was. Doesn't matter. Eventually, I washed up on shore and found my way to the bike and got on my mountain bike and trudged 18 miles. Now, at one point, I had been passed by everybody. They all had like bikes made out of like, I don't know, titanium from space and carbon fiber, and they weigh like 6 pounds. And mine was like a 30-pound bike with cinder blocks for wheels. It was ridiculous. But I saw this lady ahead of me. And ladies, please don't hate me for this. I was like, I need to pass her. I need to pass her. And so I turned it on as hard as I could. All right. And I'm gaining on her. And in a moment of weakness, I don't know what, I passed her. And I was like, yeah. And she was so upset. She yelled at me as I went by. She said, when I fix this flat tire, I'll catch you and I'll pass you too. And sure enough, she did. She fixed her flat tire and she passed me. I finished the bike race. I did my run, more of a sloggy trudge, and I came across the finish line dead last. I was the very last person across the finish line. My wife was over in the bushes. Honey, way to go. You're awesome. And it was terrible. It was terrible. miserable experience. But we reflected on it as we drove home. And that afternoon, I came out of the shower, and lo and behold, there I was again in all my glory in that mirror. However, it had changed this time. My body hadn't really physically changed much, but my attitude had. My view of myself had. I had accomplished this race, finished this race. I was pretty satisfied with myself. And the fact of the matter is that the mirror was not broken when I looked at myself the first time. It simply reflected back to me the reality of my life. I didn't like that particular reality, but it was the truth. It was true of me of that moment. I think we all have these realities. We all have a mirror that we look into. Now, it might be a physical mirror like I had that time. Might be an internal dialogue, talking within ourselves and trying to figure out what's going on in our lives. Maybe it's a trusted friend. Somebody was talking earlier today about an accountability partner. So maybe somebody's reflecting back to you what they see, and it's a truth that you're not real satisfied with, but you want to change it. You want to move ahead with it and get past that. I don't know what that is for you. For me, at that point, it was physical. It could be relational. It could be emotional. It could be financial. It could be any number of things that you want to have in your life, maybe not be as true at this point in the future. You want them to change. And I remember when I told my dad originally that I had cancer. He had actually had the same cancer that I was diagnosed with. And he said, Dan, here's what you need to do. You need to decide today to defeat it. You have to make a mental shift to defeat cancer today, no matter what that takes. And so I did. And with good doctors, good medicine, a lot of people, friends and family helping us out and praying for me, I was able to beat cancer. And I've been cancer-free since 2005, which is exciting. And I had that same mentality for the race. I saw myself and I was not happy with it. I needed to decide to defeat that, what I saw in front of me. And I moved forward with it. Now, I still need to lose a couple pounds here and there. And there's a lot of things in my life that I still want to continue to improve and be better at. But I became a little more comfortable with my reality and being very intentional about setting the trajectory that I wanted to go towards. And so my question to you right now, and you can put it in the chat or we can discuss it later, is what do you see in your mirror right now? What's reflecting back to you? Is it something that's okay and that you're satisfied with? Or is there something that you want to change? You want to involve people to help you get past it? What does that look like to you? So moving forward, what we need to realize is that we have these reflections. If we don't deal with them, the reflection is always going to be the same. We're always going to be dissatisfied. And I think Kathy was just talking about what we say to ourselves when we look in the mirror. I thought that was awesome. And hopefully it's not ooh, like I did when I saw myself that day, but you are giving yourself a little bit of positive talk. But as you move forward towards that desired future, there's going to be failures. And I know I might be the only one in the chat room and the Zoom right now that's actually had a major failure in their life. I don't know. Anybody else have a failure or two from time to time in the life? Yeah, okay. I see some hands going up. We all. I mean, life is just a series of failures that we decide to either overcome or just succumb to. In 7th grade, I went out for basketball and went to the first practice at this little school in Otsego, Ohio, outside my hometown, a little farming community. Was there from Monday after school, from Monday to Friday. And Friday afternoon, the basketball coach pulled me aside. He's like, Dan, how you doing? I said, I'm doing great, coach. This is awesome. He goes, real quick question. Is there anything else you're interested in? And I was like, no, why? He goes, because you don't have what it takes to be a basketball player and you're off the team. And I remember being like, oh, okay. As a 7th grade boy, I mean, I don't remember being devastated by it. I didn't have a huge dream to become a professional basketball player. It was more like, what am I going to do after school now in the winter? And the next day at school, I asked my best friend, I'm like, what do you do? And he's like, I wrestle. My brother wrestles, so I wrestle. I'm like, okay, well, I asked my dad, can I go out for wrestling? He's like, yeah, I wrestled in high school, go out for wrestling. So I went out for wrestling. And wasn't much better at wrestling than I was at basketball, to be quite honest. I was 0-11, and I got pinned every time except for once. And that was the last match. I remember coming off the mat and just bummed that I lost again, but at least I didn't get pinned. And Coach Warmington, I'll remember him to the day I die. We all have those people in our lives that we're going to remember till that have spoken some kind of positiveness into our lives that made us shift. He's like, Dan, nice job. He gives me a high five. He goes, you're getting much better. He goes, you're doing great. Next year, you're going to be an animal. Just keep up the good work. I'm like, okay, coach, I'll do that. And Coach Warmington left. He graduated from college and went off to get married. But the next year, 8th grade, I only lost one match, and I won the league championship that year. So his words were huge in moving me forward to continue to work out over the summer and lift and run and all those kind of things. Now, we all have these failures. We do. And they can be very simple things like not making the basketball team, you know, Jody Smith not saying yes when I asked her out in 7th grade, just turning around and walking away from me. And that was kind of devastating. That was kind of a bummer. But the bottom line is that we're all going to have these failures. But the failures in our lives are a couple things, and they're not a couple things. One, they're not final. Our failures are not final. And whatever it is that you failed at in the past doesn't matter. And they're not fatal, thank God. They don't kill us. In fact, I would submit to you that our failures free us up to really move towards what we're intended to do. I loved wrestling. I excelled at wrestling all the way through college. I coached afterwards. I was on the Navy's reserve club team in San Diego here when I was in. Loved it. I loved wrestling. I still hate basketball. In fact, this is kind of a personal, vulnerable moment here. Any sport that involves an orb is from the devil, as far as I'm concerned. I was not good at any of them. I was terrible at baseball, basketball, tennis, volleyball, pool, anything that had a ball involved, I just was no good at. I was a linebacker in football and I wrestled. And I did great. As long as I didn't have to deal with that orb, I was good to go. So we all have failures and we just need to move forward with those. Now, how does a failure detract you from your desired future? All my life, I wanted to be a Navy deep sea diver. I can remember watching Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. For those of you who remember, it's the first original like nature show out there. And every time the diving stuff was on, I wanted to be in the water with those guys. I loved watching the water stuff on TV. I had a G.I. Joe deep sea diver. I had all that stuff. I wanted to be a Navy diver. And so when I joined the Navy, I went to be a diver. I joined to become a diver. And when I got there, they said, well, we don't have any diver billets for you. So you need to do something else. We have these other programs I can tell you about. I'm like, okay, fine. We have SEALs and we have EOD. And I said, I have zero idea what either one of those is. I'd never heard of them. I don't know what it is. And the guy who was signing me up to join the Navy that day in Cleveland said, well, SEALs are the special warfare guys. They do sea, air, and land. That's what they stand for. They're total badasses. You know, you really want to be one of those. I said, what's EOD? And he goes, well, it's explosive ordnance disposal. I was like, I want to keep my fingers. So that's definitely not one I'm going to do. And I really don't want to be a SEAL. I don't want to be a SEAL. I don't even know what it is. I want to be a diver. He's like, well, when you get to boot camp and you get done with boot camp and go to your A school, you can strike to be a diver. I said, okay. Went to boot camp, went to A school, went and took the test and passed the test to be a diver. And they wrote me my orders. The guy who was giving the test was a SEAL. And he said, Dan, how come you don't want to be a SEAL? I said, I don't know. It doesn't really, strike me as something I want to do. Seems like it'd be pretty difficult. He goes, oh yeah, it's really hard. He goes, but you should think about it. You have good physical ability and you have the ASVAB test to do it. You should do it. No, I don't want to be a SEAL. And then an event happened in my life, threw me kind of in a twizzy tailspin. my girlfriend, who was supposed to move to San Diego with me, broke up with me. Said, yeah, we're not going to be together. Oh, by the way, I have another boyfriend. I'm staying here in West Virginia with my mom, and we're going to get married probably. And I'm like, wasn't seeing that one coming. That really kind of knocked me off my game. And so for whatever reason, I decided now I need to be a SEAL. I don't know why I did that, but I went back to see the SEAL recruiter over at the pool. I said, I want to take the test. I want to go to BUD/S, basic underwater demolition school. He's like, okay, do it. So I took the tests, I passed, I got my orders, and I went to BUD/S in Coronado, California, and went to Navy SEAL school. Now, I'm 4 weeks into the training, and they tell us, you're going to do drown proofing today. You're going to tie your feet together. We're going to tie your feet together. We're going to tie your hands behind your back. You're going to jump into this 14-foot pool, and you're going to prove that you won't drown. And I looked at my buddy, and I'm like, are they serious about this? Are we just, it's like a mental thing? I heard they do a lot of mental crap here. I think this is one of those things. And it's like, no, they started tying feet up and tying hands behind our back and started pushing guys in the pool. And so I was pretty freaked out, and we had to bob in the deep end. We had to swim the length of the pool and back. And we had to sink down to the bottom of the 14-foot pool and pick up a mask with our teeth and push back to the surface and show it to an instructor. And then they would let us get out of the pool. Well, I failed that evolution. All right. I failed it before they even put the ties around my feet. Okay. I was mentally screwed at that point. I was like, this is not happening. So I rolled out of that class. I went back into another class 6 weeks later, got to that same point training, same thing happened. I failed. All that to say is that I didn't want to be there in the first place, and not wanting to be there didn't help overcoming that kind of challenge. I wanted to be a diver. And I let this decision knock me off the trajectory that I wanted to move towards, which was to be a Navy diver, not to be a SEAL. I have a lot of buddies that are SEALs. They're great guys. They're awesome. I have a huge respect for what they do. I still, to this day, don't want to be one. And so I went to the fleet, did my time, 3 years on a ship, and went back, took the test again, and went to dive school. I get approved. I go to Navy dive school. We're in pool week 3, and guess what they tell us we have to do? Today is drown proofing. And I was like, this still is going to suck. However, I'm ready for it now because I want to be a diver. And I passed it. The first time, knocked it out of the park because my mental state was, this is something I have decided ahead of time I'm going to defeat. I'm going to beat this. I'm going to make this, and I'm going to be a diver. And I went on to become a diver. And so my question to you is, a failure that you've had that was almost self-inflicted. That's how I look at going to BUD/S. I inflicted it upon myself. It was my own fault that I went. I shouldn't have gone. I should have just stayed the course. But if you had a failure in your life that's freed you up to pursue your desired future, failing at BUD/S freed me up. I had to pay a huge price. I had to spend 3 years on a ship before I could go back to dive school. But I was able to go, and I became a Navy diver. And so name a failure, and you can put it in the chat or jot it down. We can talk about it later, that freed you up to really go after your desired future. And to wrap this up, I just want to talk about a couple things on finishing strong. Again, I told you earlier about this idea of deciding today to defeat whatever it is that's kind of got you down. I lied a little bit about the race. I didn't actually finish dead last. I was the last person to cross the finish line, but there's over 100 people that didn't finish the race at all. And so they dropped out for a number of reasons. I don't know what they all are. Some were medical, some just couldn't do it physically, whatever it was. And so, but I finished the race. And my encouragement to you is set your trajectory, make wise decisions that are going to move you to that trajectory, and finish the race. Don't quit. Don't give up. no matter if you're dead last. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. In 1996, there was a golfer, a professional golfer. He was ranked 100, and he made $1.1 million that year. We're not all going to be professional, top of our game people. We're not going to be household names. At least I'm not. I'm not going to be a professional basketball player. I'll never do hair care product commercials. I'm quite certain of that. It's just the bottom line. I mean, some of the finish lines, to be quite honest, are chosen for us. It's just the way it is. I mean, it doesn't matter. And if you want to pursue something that you're going to continue to get beat up in, knock yourself out. It's up to you. But there's going to be things I think that we desire to do. For me, it's cartooning, it's diving, it's speaking. Those things I have fun with, whether I'm getting paid for them or not. I enjoy doing them. I get great feedback. I'm affirmed with positive messages from other people. When I went on the basketball court, I never heard one time, "Hey, Knauss, nice job out there." It was like, "Get out of my way. Give me the ball. Go sit down. Give me a water." I mean, basketball was not my thing. So the question is, who are you meant to be? And are you pursuing it? I had to really struggle. To this day, I still even struggle a little bit with that question of, who am I really meant to be? Am I going to continue to pursue those things and go past those quitting points? Bill Hybels said, perseverance is just busting through the quitting points. And we get to that point where we have these quitting points in our life, and we just got to bust through them. I've seen a lot of great stuff here, and I'm like, man, I don't have a book. I don't have like a workshop to do. I don't have like some cool 10 things to make yourself, sexier. None of that. I don't have any of this stuff yet, but I will. I'll get it at some point, and hopefully within this next year, that'll be something I work towards. I just got to bust through that quitting point and stop comparing myself up or down to other people and just move forward. Final thoughts as I wrap it up here, folks. Appreciate your time. The first thing is that everybody is a 10 in something. We just got to stop trying to be something we're not supposed to be. We're all designed to influence somebody and something in our lives. We all have a destiny to fulfill. And it's really being honest with ourselves and going after that, no matter what the world tells us, no matter what people say to us about it. I met a guy years ago. I taught him scuba at a shop I worked for, and he worked for a gentleman who was in the top 100 of the Fortune 500 millionaires, billionaires, whatever they are now. And he was a truck driver, and he drove around the United States, and he would see little parcels of land. He'd invest a little bit of money, but he started out as a lawyer, and he hated being a lawyer. He just hated it. His parents were lawyers, his grandparents. He goes, "I'm done. I'm not going to be a lawyer. I'm buying a truck, and I'm going to travel around the world." And one of those little parcels of land had oil on it. Another parcel of land had gas on it. Another parcel of land wanted to be bought up by a major university. And so he became this millionaire by, first and foremost, following after what he really wanted to be, not what he didn't want to be. My encouragement to you is that understand there's people in your future waiting for an encounter with you, specifically you. The message only you have. The message that's going to shift the way they think perhaps about themselves and maybe a decision they were going to make. Whatever that is, just understand that keep pursuing your thing because it's going to impact somebody in the future. The bottom line is the mirror is not broken. We just have to be honest with the reflection we're looking at and really decide to be intentional with our choices to move us towards that thing we ultimately want to be, whether it's a speaker, coach, healer, truck driver, whatever it is. So my encouragement is go after it, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead, and enjoy it, even if you're dead last. So I'll turn it over to Steve and Olivia and Irma. Thanks so much, you guys, for putting up with me. I had a great time.
Thank you, Dan. That was excellent. And when I saw your bio and I saw this about being a SEAL and all this type of thing, I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy's just so not like me. And I'm 5'2", and of the three of us, Irma is the tallest. I've never found a ball that I want to spend any time with at all.
All right.
But that was a wonderful presentation, and you had some real gold nuggets there. Everybody is a 10 at something, whether we have a full head of hair or whether
Yep,
we have solar panels on top.
My grandpa called a solar panel for a sex machine, but I didn't get that gene. So,
but so true. It's excellent. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Dan?
Dan, that was just a wonderful presentation that you gave. Like, I'll echo Steve's sentiment, so many beautiful golden nuggets. And I love how you portray the mirror, right, as something figurative too. It doesn't have to be the literal mirror, but it can also be a figurative mirror. So that was really, yeah, just an aha moment for me.
Good. Thanks, Olivia. Thanks.
And I love, don't compare yourself to up and down. And you may have been feeling like you're out of the element with these other speakers, but you did a fantastic job right where you're at. And I'm just so excited for the potential to see you grow, right? I think.
Right. Yeah. Thanks.
So not having to do everything all at once, but just giving us that room to expand and to be spontaneous and to grow.
Right. For sure.
I must say that you've had us in stitches. I could just imagine this group of you guys. But thank you.
It was terrible.
No, your presentation and your speech was not terrible. It was, when we laugh at ourselves, then it's a battle won. You're halfway there. You're on your way.
Right.
When we look at ourselves and it's woe me, and you just get so dark and so hard on yourself. And again, what Kathy said and what you said is just, accept yourself for who you are. And I agree with you. You look at the mirror the way you look at yourself, the way you look at your situation, the way you look at where you are at this moment in time. And I really like that analogy.
Great, thanks. I'll say, any feedback, any ideas, any thoughts from anybody in the summit, more than welcome to take it on board. I've was married for 20. I am married, been married for 27 years, so I can take a verbal beating. I know how to put up with it. I got tough skin, so so any kind of input, good or bad, it really doesn't matter. I'm taking